Hello there, YouTubers, and welcome to another episode of DrCassette's Workshop. Today, the Fisher Model CRWZ1 cassette deck. This somewhat weird, high-end, and for a dual cassette deck, this certainly is high-end unit, professional digital reference. I do have a full video presentation of this up on YouTube, which I am going to link into the video description in case you're interested. Well, ever since I made that video, this has just been sitting around, because I never really found a purpose for this. And that might change now. However, whenever I dug this out, I had to find out that we definitely have to do some repairs to this before it's going to be usable again. Problem number one, there are some foam cushions in the cassette compartments that you can kind of make out right there. And the foam is deteriorating. As you can see, that'll have to come out, because if you leave a cassette in there for a little bit longer, it's going to come out dirty. So that's a bit of a no-no. Much worse than that is the fact that the belts are shot. I don't know, I can't remember checking the condition of the belts whenever I first got the cassette deck, so I don't know if they got that worse within the few months that I had this, or if they were already on their way out whenever I first looked into here. But fact is, the belts are absolutely loose. I am quite surprised that they even managed to drive the cassette deck somehow, but the mechanisms definitely don't have enough tension anymore on those belts, not enough friction, not enough force to do certain things. They constantly trigger the auto stop and auto reverse, and they just don't work the way they should. I have found two belts that I pulled out of another dual cassette deck, so they are two identical belts, and I'm hoping that these are going to be tight enough to fit into there. I'm quite optimistic, but of course you can never know. Anyway, before we continue, let's take a bit of a closer look at the technical side of things in this deck. At the back of the unit, we have an interesting design. As you can see, the transformer is mounted on the outside. It says dynamic power supply, but really it's just a transformer. You can kind of see the connections running into there. Primary side right there, and then the secondary comes out right there. Classic power supply, rectifier, smoothing capacitor, and a linear regulator. This one right there is a power transistor. All of these are 7.8 and 7.9 type voltage regulators, positive and negative. Well, the heat sinks are kind of too small. They are getting pretty hot, but that's typical for the 1990s. Then down here we have the microcontroller that controls everything. It says microcomputer on the circuit board, which yeah, that's making a bit more out of this thing than it really is. But it's a microcontroller right there, a little microprocessor with attached memory, storage, program memory, so on and so forth. That's all in that chip. We have the level meter, and that can cause some interference, especially the fluorescent ones, so it's good that they put it over here, although it theoretically does have something to do with the audio side of things. Down here we have a variety of stuff. I guess we'd have the erase oscillator, and over here is the speed control. And that's the control side of things, which is in its separate metal box, nicely shielded from everything else. And then over here we have the audio side of things, and also this, of course, sticking out is the bias oscillator, which is in its nice shielding can. And up here we have the DBX encoder and decoder IC. As you can see, it says DBX on there. It's an AN type IC, so it was made by Panasonic. Ironically, the Dolby encoder and decoder was made by Sony. That's that chip right there. And then we got all sorts of op amps in here. And now there are also, which has to do with the microcontroller, there are a lot of multiplexing ICs, like that one right there. All these Toshibas that you can see are multiplexers. And what they do is they switch audio signals depending on an input signal that is just a 5-volt logic signal coming out of the controller right there. So that makes sense, and that also explains this rather complicated power supply, because these multiplexing ICs, in order to switch audio frequencies, AC voltages, they need no less than 3 different input voltages, just operating voltages from the power supply. And over here, this is where the heads of the record deck hook up. And that right there is the sad remains of the old record play switch. As you can see, it's just a little relay right there. They don't need any more than that. Op amp right next to that to do some amplification. I guess they had to use the relay because the multiplexing ICs wouldn't have enough signal-to-noise ratio. The mechanisms are 2 motor mechanisms. This motor runs the capstans. This motor runs the take-up and supply reels during fast-forward and rewind. There is an adjustment right there. I have no idea what that does. It can't be for the speed. It hooks up to the heads, which is a bit weird. So I'll have to figure that out, I guess. These are not the best dual cassette deck mechanisms I've ever seen. I once had another Fisher, I think it was a CRW891. That actually had 3 motor mechanisms for each deck, so 6 motors in total, which was quite crazy. And there it is. Anyway, I'll now have to try to pull off this faceplate. I'll just take all the screws out, and hopefully this is going to pull off somehow. Because of course you will have to take it out. It's not one of those designs where you can pull out the mechanism from the back. Here is something that I've never seen on a dual cassette deck. They had serviceability in mind whenever they designed it. As you can see, you can take the bottom panel off. Isn't that amazing? So you get easy access to all the circuit boards, as you can see. And I can't even find any bad solder joints on the circuit boards. Even the audio jacks are soldered in properly. So that's nice. The mechanisms are screwed into this part of the frame, so I'll have to take that out, and then hopefully the whole entire front is going to slide out with that panel attached to it. There is one mean thing. The bottom panel has these stupid plastic standoffs for the circuit boards. So if you don't have that in mind and you try to pull off the bottom panel, you're going to break the circuit boards in half. And there is no point. These circuit boards are in there nice and stable and solid, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take these out. While the removable bottom panel is definitely a very positive thing, all in all, this is quite ridiculously complicated. You got to keep in mind, we only want to replace a couple of belts. So as you can see, I now have the front part taken off, and of course that required disconnecting all the connectors. There is the back of the unit, and it is important to go through and number all the connectors, because you're never going to get this back together if you don't do that. You're not going to be able to figure out what went where, because there are a whopping 21 connectors connecting this part to the electronics. So I'll now proceed to take out these mechanisms. Should be like 4 screws that I have to take out, and then I should be able to get into the cassette compartment to remove that rotten foam, and I should be able to take this apart to replace the belts. Another thing that I noticed that I'm going to take care of, classic problem, the solder joints of the fluorescent display, they don't look that great. They aren't bad, but they certainly don't look good. So this may end up cracking, and then you have this typical sort of fluorescent display that doesn't work properly. And here we finally have the record mechanism taken out, and I am glad to report that my replacement belts are most likely going to fit. And there we have it. As you can see, in order to take this back plate off, you first of all have to take this cable organizer apart. You end up with a huge mess of wires. You have to unsolder 3 of them up there. Luckily they are marked on that circuit board right there. That's the front. Got the erase and record playback heads. And, oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. We do have an erase head right there. Oh, that's probably just for search. So that might be just a primitive playback head for the search function, and then this is erase and playback heads. Lots of plastic. Made in 1988. You can probably read the date code right there. So I'm now going to go and carefully take this thing apart. Always a somewhat scary sight, because you can never know if you're ever going to be able to get this all back together with it still working. There we have the mechanism taken apart. It's quite a nice one, really gotta say. The back bearings are kind of weird. As you can see, they got these plastic parts just lying in there, all loose. This circle sticks through the hole right there, but as you can see, massive metal flywheels. For a double cassette deck, that is very good, because, you know, most of them only have a plastic part or a plastic combined with a flimsy metal disc. This one's got a proper metal flywheel. The original belt, if I just hook it up here, and as you can see, that stretches out to pretty much infinity, so that's no good. So it's time to fit in one of the new belts. It runs across this flywheel, then to up there, and this one, it's only touched by the belt on the side of it. And the recording mechanism is done. Got the new belt in place, as you can see. It's all nice and tight. I hope I got the cable management right. I have a feeling that these connections might be too short for some reason. We'll see. So, let's move on to the playback mechanism. Well, I guess on an old 1970s cassette deck I would have been able to replace the belts within 10 minutes. Well, I've now been about 2 hours messing around with this thing, and I now have the cassette compartments taken apart, and I've removed the foam, the rotten foam, out of these grooves right here. Well, that's how that looks. That's no good anymore. I already have this one back together. It's all spring-loaded, as you can see. Got 4 springs and then 2 screws that hold this part in. And really gotta say, the design of these cassette doors is an epic fail. I mean, looking at these, you'd think that using these 2 screws you could take the whole thing apart. Well, I thought these were screws, and you know, you needed a special tool to get them out, and then they had some counter nuts sitting in there that would fall into the deck if you messed around with it. Well, it turns out these things are only push pins. So they are pushed in the factory. You're probably going to be able to get them out with a lot of force, but question is, are you ever going to be able to get them back in? And I'm not that optimistic about that. So getting these doors apart is pretty much impossible. So I don't know how they thought you're going to be able to adjust the heads, because there are no holes in the cassette doors at all to do that. And I think even if you got that decorative piece of metal off of here, I think the plastic frame behind that, that doesn't even have the holes either. So that's kind of weird. Anyway, this is a playback mechanism, and I'm finished replacing the belts on that. I also lubricated the motor, lubricated both motors, as I really needed that. And, well, I'm now going to put the cassette compartment back together. The next thing I want to repair is the eject mechanism of the record deck. Whenever I got the deck, it wasn't working right, and the reason is that part down there, this plastic piece, is broken, that holding part. And I don't know, maybe Sanyo or Fisher designed this to break, because this is very, very flimsy. Now what I initially did to fix that is I added this big ugly looking screw right there to kind of push this up, and you can actually see it from the outside. It's right there, and I want to get rid of that. So I think what I can do is I can insert a piece of plastic under that screw, and maybe that can push this all back together. I think I got the problem solved, at least for the most part. I glued a strip of plastic between those mounting points and the plastic faceplate that just folds around up above the mounting points, and so the mounting point that used to be broken is this one right there, and that is now supported by the strip of plastic, so it's not going to go anywhere anymore. I got that glued in. Unfortunately, the lower part of the mounting is also broken. I didn't notice that, so I guess the eject button, it should work, but it's just not going to sit in there perfectly straight and everything. Now, before that also happens to the other cassette deck, as you can see, I just did the same thing over there and got that strip of plastic glued into there. It's going to be invisible from the outside. I also resoldered the joints of the display. So I guess I can now start putting this all back together. I now have the front reassembled. I took the last chance and cleaned the heads and all the rest of the mechanism, the tape path, and all the micro switches. So that should all be fine. Lubricated the motors. There is the front. Unfortunately, my eject switch repair was not entirely successful. It does work, as you can see, but not quite as nicely as the other one. The other eject switch does. On that, you just push it and it opens. On this, if you just push it, you know, it's just getting stuck. You have to kind of mess around with it a little bit. But at least I can get rid of that ugly screw that was sticking out of the bottom. So I'll now have to go ahead and put this back onto that. And now comes the moment of truth. I can't put it off anymore. I got this all screwed back together. I got the connectors reattached. Of course, the cable ties are all gone, so this is an absolute mess in there right now. I'll have to fix that, if it works. I also had to unsolder and then resolder the power switch. Forgot to mention that. Let's see what it does if we try to turn it on. Okay, no unusual behavior. Let's yeah, this is a little bit of a problem. Let's put in a cassette. Other direction. Okay, well this deck seems to work. Let's try the other deck. This always had a problem where you'd press start and then it would try to start, it would then get stuck, it would then reverse and start there and get stuck and then reverse again and go stop, and you had to press playback again and then it would work. Let's see if that is fixed. Well, I'd say those are pretty promising results, so let me test this a little more and I'll have to see if the speed is still correct. But so far I'm quite optimistic. I adjusted the speed, and in this cassette deck that's actually quite easy. I do like that. Instead of messing around with the regulators in the backs of the motor, you get two individual regulators for each motor. So for the record deck we have high speed over there, normal speed right there, and then for the playback deck we have high speed down there and normal speed over there. I used the 1 kHz test tone tape that I made, and just as expected, both of the decks were running way too fast. Like, it was supposed to be 1000 Hz, and the playback deck, for instance, was running at 1034. So that was quite a bit too high. So I got that fixed using the frequency counter of the scope, as you can see. There it is. As you can see, it's relatively accurate. And a little trick, you can go ahead and set the averaging. As you can see, I got averaging activated 16 times. And that way you get a bit of, you know, a more constant reading right there. It's not jumping all over the place all the time. So I adjusted the normal speed first, and then by shorting out the two pins down there, one still has the alligator clip attached to it. These two you got to short out. That switches the deck into high speed mode, and then you can just go ahead and adjust your frequency display to 2 kHz. And here we are. It's the end of the day. It is relatively late, as you can see. And it's also the end of this project. As you can see, I got it all back together. I got the cables reorganized, at least a little bit. As you can see, it's still kind of a mess right there, but there isn't much you can do about that. So, I'm now going to put the cover back on this Fisher CR-WZ1 cassette deck. And I certainly hope that this is going to keep on working for quite a while, because this has been a lot of work. Thank you for watching, and see you again soon.